Natalie Brooks carried a battered blue folder she'd built from sleepless weeks, breath thin as she crossed the marble lobby. Derek Lawson, her fiancé, deliberate, admired, stood with his arm around Bianca, Natalie's twin. Bianca's smile was surgical, made to cut without leaving blood. Co-workers stalled mid-step, whispers rising like gnats. Natalie felt the folder soften in her hands. "Derek?" she asked, voice cracked. He didn't blink. Bianca adjusted her blazer, owning the space. He stopped pretending. The sentence slid under Natalie's ribs. The folder slipped. Charts fanned across the floor like wings that never learned to fly. Bianca stepped closer, perfume sharp. "You give, you wait, you hope. I take." Derek's silence stamped the betrayal. The janitor paused down the hall. Daniel Hale, quiet eyes, gray coveralls, mop resting like a staff. Natalie's cheeks burned. Bianca's laugh struck flint. "You'll never be enough." Daniel stepped forward, voice even. "You don't deserve this." Natalie stared at the scuffed tile, shame flooding hot, then cold. "Don't pity me," she whispered. Daniel Hale shook his head. Not pity, clarity. He lowered his voice so only she could hear. "Do you want your life back?" Bianca's laughter kept sawing at the air. "How?" Natalie asked. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "Marry me." The word hit like thunder in a church. Natalie almost laughed. "I don't even know you." Daniel's jaw set. "You see a janitor. I am more. Stand with me, and no one here will bend your head again." Derek's phone chimed. He didn't look up. Natalie felt something shift, grief hardening into will. "Why me?" "Because you stand even when it breaks you." Her pulse hammered. Pride said run. Survival said choose. "Yes," she breathed. Daniel exhaled once, steady. "Then leave the folder. You're done proving worth to people who prefer you small."
Under humming fluorescence, a weary clerk slid 2 forms forward. Natalie's hands trembled as she signed. When the question came, "Do you take?" her voice flickered, then held, "I do." A thin gold band cooled her skin. Outside, night smelled like rain and exhaust. 4 black cars idled at the curb as if they'd been waiting her whole life. Doors opened in unison. Daniel's hand steadied her elbow. The convoy slid through thinning traffic, past the river, into trees where streetlights gave up. Iron gates parted. Inside, a lantern-lit villa breathed jasmine and quiet authority. Guards stood like statues. Servants offered water and towels. Natalie hardly touched anything. Adrenaline climbed her throat. "Rest," Daniel said. She stared at the ring instead. This was either rescue or ruin, she couldn't tell which. "Time," he added, and the cars rolled again toward a waiting jet stitched with light at the runway's edge. The jet's cabin glowed soft, cream leather, polished wood, crystal chiming as engines spooled. Natalie buckled, palms damp. "I don't understand," she said. "I married a stranger." Daniel faced her, posture unforced, eyes steady. "You married a man who watched you be underestimated and refused to leave you there." He paused. "My name is Daniel Hale." The syllables rang like headlines she'd skimmed without believing. Venture funds, ports, hospitals. Her jaw loosened. "You?" He nodded once. "I started on mop buckets. I keep the cover because power hears truth better from a ghost. From this day, you do not bow." The plane cleaved clouds. Natalie pressed her ring to her palm until it hurt, anchoring herself to sensation. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you never lied about your hunger," he said. "And because I want a partner, not a prop." The cabin hummed. Her heartbeat slowly matched the engine's steady climb.
Weeks unspooled gentler than any life Natalie knew. Morning walks through citrus trees. Evenings by candlelight
where Daniel poured her coffee and refused to let her apologize for existing. He asked what she wanted. She answered slowly at first, then clearer. Sleep returned, shame receded like a tide. A guard arrived with a heavy cream envelope, gold-edged, her name scrawled in Bianca's impatient hand. Natalie slid it open. The words glittered with triumph. A wedding at the private airport. Red carpets. Cameras. Come, the letter dared. See what you lost. The paper shook between her fingers, anger rising like heat off asphalt. Daniel read over her shoulder, jaw tightening. She expects you alone, he said. Natalie folded the invite in half, then again, until it became a hard square. I won't arrive small, she replied. For the first time, she heard steel in her own voice, and didn't fear it. Bianca chose the city's private airport to crown herself. Chandeliers hung from steel trusses. A red carpet ran through the hangar like a vein. Guests preened, cameras ready. Derek Lawson, tux neat, smile curated, stood at Bianca's side, a victory he thought permanent. Conversation quieted when engines thundered above. A silver jet kissed the runway, taxied, and halted beyond the doors. Stairs descended. Daniel Hale appeared first, tailored charcoal, presence unmistakable. Gasps rippled, phones rose. Then Natalie stepped into daylight in a flowing black gown, posture unbent, her hand laced in Daniel's. Flashbulbs cracked like ice. Some guests recognized the name, mouthed it to others, Hale. Bianca's bouquet trembled. Color drained from Derek's face. Natalie crossed the threshold with measured calm, each step rewriting the story Bianca had drafted for her humiliation. The room adjusted around the truth now standing in it. They met beneath the chandeliers, the sisters who once shared a crib and now shared nothing. Bianca's smile tried to reset itself, then cracked. You weren't invited to perform, she hissed. Natalie kept her voice level. You mailed me a stage. Derek shifted, measuring escape routes. Daniel stood a step behind, silent gravity. You always wanted to stand where I stood, Bianca said, louder for the crowd. Now look, you scavenged a savior. Natalie let the words pass. You taught me something, she answered. People who build themselves by breaking others always forget the cleanup. Bianca scoffed. You're still my shadow. Natalie lifted her left hand. The ring caught the chandelier's fire. A murmur spread as guests connected the symbol to the man beside her. I am no one's shadow, Natalie said. Not yours, not his. Derek's eyes fell. Bianca's composure faltered, pride finally meeting something it couldn't swallow. Daniel stepped forward, voice calm enough to carry. You pointed at me once and laughed, he said to Bianca and Derek. Called me a janitor. I was mopping your floor to hear how you spoke to people without power. The crowd stilled. I learned quickly, he added, who confuses cruelty for ambition. Bianca's throat worked. Derek forced a smile. Congratulations, Mr. Hale. Daniel didn't look at him. Natalie owes you nothing, he said. But the city owes her a corrected story. Reporters straightened, recognizing their headline. Bianca's jealousy sparked into panic. She reached for Derek's arm and found only sleeve. His hand had slipped away. Natalie noticed, not triumphantly, just free. You built a day to watch me break, she told Bianca, and invited cameras. She let silence hold. Keep the dress. I'll keep my dignity. Even the chandeliers seemed to hum as the crowd shifted its allegiance.
A woman in navy stepped from the cluster of guests, HR director, eyes tired, conscience heavier. Enough, she said, voice shaking a little. Bianca, we need to talk about the email thread. Murmurs rose like wind. The woman held up her phone. Time-stamped downloads from Natalie's drive the night before her presentation. Your login, your edits. Derek stared at Bianca, bloodless. You said she froze, he whispered. Cameras clicked, hungry. Bianca's chin lifted, defiant, but her hands betrayed her, fingers worrying the bouquet to pieces. Ambition requires initiative, she snapped. Someone scoffed from the back. The HR director exhaled, steadier. It's called theft. Natalie felt heat climb her throat and forced her shoulders down. She wouldn't give Bianca another spectacle. Daniel's hand found hers, anchoring. I don't need vindication, Natalie said, clear. I needed distance. Consider it permanent. The room absorbed the line, then began to believe it. Natalie turned toward the hangar doors. Cameras followed, but she gave them only profile and poise. Behind her, Bianca's voice rose, brittle. You think you've won because you found a richer ladder? Natalie didn't turn. I walked away from ladders, she said. They're just another way to look down on people. Derek called her name, small for the first time. She kept moving. Sun flooded the threshold. The runway heat smelled like summer and second chances. Daniel matched her stride, quiet as he'd been the first day, steady as stone. At the carpet's edge, he paused. Anything left to say? He asked. Natalie looked back once, not at Bianca, but at the girl she used to be, trembling in a lobby. She lifted her chin. Thank you for teaching me what I'm not. Then she stepped into light, hand in his, and the crowd parted like a tide given new instructions.
Natalie sat in the villa's courtyard, surrounded by lanterns glowing against jasmine vines. Wealth pressed against her senses. The marble floors, the fountains murmuring, the guards stationed like shadows. Yet inside she felt small, an imposter walking in borrowed shoes. She touched the ring, its weight both shield and shackle. Bianca's laughter still rang in her head, slicing through the stillness like glass. Jealousy gnawed. How easily her sister had stolen Derek. How confidently she'd commanded attention. Daniel stepped into the courtyard, jacket off, sleeves rolled, his presence calm but grounding. He set a cup of tea in front of her. This is your home now, he said quietly. Natalie blinked hard, fighting tears. Luxury couldn't silence her wounds. I don't belong here, she whispered. Daniel met her gaze, firm but kind. Then we'll build a place where you do. The words settled like an anchor, keeping her from drifting. Dinner was served in a vaulted room where chandeliers burned like fire caught in crystal. Natalie sat across from Daniel at a long, polished table. Servants moved in silence, but he waved them away. He poured her wine himself, unhurried, his gestures unpracticed for wealth, yet certain. Tell me what you want, he said. Natalie laughed softly, bitterly. Want? I'm used to scraps. My sister made sure of it. Daniel leaned closer, voice steady. Then stop taking scraps. Ask for what matters. Her throat tightened. The question itself felt foreign. No one had ever asked her what she wanted, only what she could give, what she could sacrifice. She swallowed hard, whispering, peace. Daniel nodded, lifting his glass in quiet agreement. Then we start there. For the first time, she saw not pity in his eyes, but recognition. And that made her chest ache more than all Bianca's cruelty.
Natalie lay awake beneath white sheets, moonlight slanting across the ceiling. The villa was quiet, the kind of quiet that mocked you with memory. Bianca's voice replayed mercilessly. You'll never be enough. Derek's smirk bled into her dreams, staining even the softest silence. Jealousy flared, not for Derek, but for Bianca's power, her ability to wound and still stand tall. Natalie pressed her palms to her eyes, shame scalding hot. The bed felt enormous, foreign, like she'd stepped into another woman's life. A soft knock. Daniel entered, wordless, carrying a folded blanket. He draped it across her and didn't speak, just sat in the chair nearby, steady as stone, his presence filling the room. For the first time that night, Natalie's breath slowed. The ghosts of her sister's words still clawed at her, but they no longer owned the silence. Someone else did. Dawn spilled gold across the villa's gardens. Natalie padded barefoot into the kitchen, hair tangled, mind heavy. She reached for the coffee pot, but Daniel's hand gently stopped her. "Not today," he murmured, sliding the cup into her hands instead. She blinked, startled. "I'm not used to being taken care of." He smiled faintly. "You've carried others long enough. Now let someone carry you." The words cracked something inside her. For years, she'd poured coffee for Derek, for coworkers, for Bianca at family gatherings, always serving, never served. Natalie stared at the dark liquid swirling in the porcelain. It wasn't coffee, it was permission. Outside, fountains whispered over stone. The day felt lighter, as if her burdens had been trimmed at the edges. Jealousy had once burned her hollow. Here, it found no purchase. A different fire stirred, one built on the possibility of being seen.
A guard delivered it in the afternoon, an envelope thick with arrogance. Natalie recognized Bianca's handwriting before she broke the seal. The letter dripped venom. "Since you vanished from your little apartment, the city assumed you'd disappeared. But you must attend my wedding. It will be the grandest this city has ever seen. Don't miss the spectacle." Natalie's hands trembled as she read, her stomach nodding. Bianca hadn't wondered where she'd gone, hadn't cared. She was too busy parading Derek as her prize, too drunk on victory to notice Natalie still breathed. Daniel read over her shoulder, jaw tight. "She expects you broken," he said. Natalie crushed the letter into her fist. Anger roared through her chest, jealousy and humiliation igniting into rage. She lifted her chin. "Then I'll give her a spectacle. Just not the one she thinks." The words tasted like steel on her tongue. Across town, Bianca twirled in front of a gilded mirror, her wedding gown spilling like frost across the carpet. "The city will bow," she whispered to her reflection. Her smile gleamed sharper than the diamond Derek had slid onto her finger. She rehearsed lines she'd deliver to cameras, already basking in the envy she'd summon. "My twin?" she muttered with a laugh. "She'll crawl in shadows while I wear the crown." Derek leaned against the wall, scrolling his phone, detached but smug. Bianca studied him, envy still gnawing despite her prize. She needed the wedding not just to marry Derek, but to erase Natalie completely. Her cruelty wasn't enough unless the whole city applauded her triumph. Jealousy was her fuel, venom her perfume. The gown swished as she spun again, convinced nothing could fracture her stage. She never noticed how shallow Derek's smile had become.
Natalie awoke to her name splashed across a gossip site. Disgraced ex-fiancé weds janitor in secret. Bianca's fingerprints stained every word. Comments burned hotter than the headlines. Pathetic, desperate, a charity case in a dress. Natalie's chest caved, shame suffocating her in the villa's golden halls. She pressed the phone to the table, fingers trembling. The humiliation was global now. Daniel read the article, his expression unchanging. "Do they matter?" he asked calmly. Natalie laughed bitterly. "They're the world, and the world believes I'm a fool." Daniel leaned forward. "The world is blind until someone makes them see. You'll have that chance." Rage pulsed where shame had lived. Bianca wanted her drowned in ridicule, but Natalie felt a strange heat inside, something sharper than despair. "Then I won't hide," she said quietly. Her voice carried a new edge. Daniel simply nodded. That night, Daniel opened the villa's study, walls lined with ledgers, maps, photographs clipped with pins. "It's time," he said. Natalie followed, heart racing. He lifted a leather-bound portfolio and slid it across the desk. She opened it, eyes widening at the headlines, the financial empires, the corporate seals. Daniel Hale, billionaire, builder of industries, owner of fleets, a man whose decisions swayed markets. Natalie's breath faltered, her chest seized, the memory of mocking laughter crashing against this revelation. The janitor her sister had laughed at was a king in disguise. Daniel's voice was steady. "Now you know." Natalie pressed her palms against the desk, overwhelmed. Relief, disbelief, anger, and hope collided in her veins. For the first time since betrayal, she didn't feel small. Bianca's stage would not hold under the weight of this truth. Natalie's humiliation had just found its counterattack.
In the days that followed, Daniel began guiding Natalie with measured patience. He walked her through the villa's halls lined with portraits of leaders, showing her that power was not a costume, but a posture. He corrected the slump of her shoulders, lifted her chin when it dipped. At dinner with foreign guests, he let her speak, nodding at her words like they were treaties. Each night, he told her the same line: "You are enough, and tomorrow you'll prove it." Natalie felt rage simmering inside her still. Bianca's letter, Derek's betrayal, the world's laughter, but now it had a shape, a direction. Fear still whispered that she was an imposter, but Daniel's hand at her back kept her moving forward. The reflection in the mirror changed, little by little. No longer broken, no longer begging. A woman sharpening herself for the stage she'd been forced to enter. The evening before the wedding, Natalie stood on the villa's balcony, city lights flickering faint on the horizon. Daniel joined her, his expression grave. "Tomorrow, she'll try to tear you apart in front of everyone." Natalie's throat tightened, rage and fear twisting inside her. "She already did," she whispered. "But this time, I'll answer." Daniel studied her, then extended his hand. Together. She hesitated only a breath before lacing her fingers with his. A pact sealed not with rings or vows, but with the fire of shared defiance. Below, guards moved like shadows across the grounds. Above, the stars burned bright and sharp. Natalie lifted her chin, her heart pounding with something new. Not shame, not despair, but anticipation. Tomorrow wasn't Bianca's crown anymore. Tomorrow was her reckoning.
The airport hangar gleamed like a palace. Chandeliers swung from steel beams, red carpet rolled down the length of the floor. Bianca Lawson stood at the center, her gown glittering with crystals, bouquet clutched like a scepter. She lifted her chin, savoring the cameras, the flashes, the whispers of admiration. "Natalie will come," she murmured to herself, her smile cruel. "She'll crawl and broken, and I'll crush her in front of them all." Derek shifted uneasily beside her, tugging at his cufflinks, but Bianca hardly noticed. This was her coronation. The woman she betrayed would be nothing but a footnote to her triumph. She rehearsed the moment Natalie appeared, already imagining the gasps, the ridicule, the crown of envy she would wear. Yet deep down, a flicker of unease gnawed at her. Triumph always tasted sweeter when it crushed blood. Tonight, she planned to savor it fully. The ceremony's hum paused when the first vibration rolled through the hangar floor. Guests turned, frowning. Then came the thunder, the roar of jet engines ripping the air. Bianca's heart skipped, her smile stiffening. Outside, a sleek silver jet descended, its metallic skin catching the afternoon sun like a blade. It rolled across the tarmac with the precision of power, stopping just beyond the open doors. Reporters surged forward, flashes bursting. The staircase lowered with a hiss, and silence swallowed the crowd. Daniel Hale stepped out first, dark suit tailored, his presence sharp enough to cut through stone. Murmurs erupted, names whispered like gospel. Bianca's bouquet slipped in her hand. Derek's face drained of color. Recognition widened his eyes. This wasn't a janitor. This was a man the city bowed to. Then, from the jet's shadow, Natalie appeared in a flowing black gown, her posture unbent, her hand locked firmly in his.
Natalie's steps echoed against the red carpet, as if each one carried its own verdict. Flashbulbs cracked wildly, the crowd pushing forward for a better view. Reporters shouted, but their voices blurred into a single wave of disbelief. The woman they expected to mock walked as if she owned the ground beneath her. Daniel's hand never left hers, steady, anchoring. Whispers spiraled through the hangar. She married him. Daniel Hale. the billionaire. Bianca's breath came shallow, her cheeks burning. This wasn't humiliation, it was inversion. Her plan had tilted upside down. Natalie's black gown swept across the carpet, its satin catching light like water. She stopped just a few feet from her twin. "You invited me to fall apart," Natalie said, her voice carrying across the silence. "Instead, you made me unforgettable." Gasps rippled. Bianca's lips trembled, fury clawing through her chest as the cameras devoured every second. Bianca's smile cracked. She tightened her grip on Derek's arm, her voice sharp. "This is nothing but a stunt. He's pretending for you." Derek's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. Natalie's voice held steady, stronger than she remembered herself capable of. "Pretend? The world already knows his name. What they don't know is yours, except as a thief." Murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind in dry grass. Bianca's eyes flared, green fire under the chandeliers. "You were always the shadow. You'll always be the shadow," she spat, voice echoing too loudly, too desperate. Natalie stepped forward, closing the small gap, her face calm. "No, Bianca. Shadows belong to light, and for once, I am standing in mine." Derek shifted, pulling his arm free from Bianca's grip. The crowd inhaled sharply. Humiliation settled heavy on Bianca's shoulders, but rage lit her spine. She wasn't finished yet.
A woman in a navy dress stepped forward, Judith from HR, her hands shaking but her voice firm. "Enough," she said, pulling a phone from her clutch. "Bianca, I have the records. You stole Natalie's report. You altered it, passed it off as your own." Gasps erupted. Guests craned their necks. Cameras whirred. Derek's face paled, sweat beading at his temple. "You said she froze," he muttered. The HR director's voice sharpened. "She didn't freeze. You cheated her, and we all saw it." Natalie's chest burned, not with shame this time, but with vindication. Bianca's face twisted, her bouquet snapping in half as her fingers clawed the stems. "Lies!" she screamed, but her voice cracked. The crowd no longer believed. Daniel stood silent, letting Natalie's truth blaze brighter. She didn't need saving anymore. She was saving herself, and the city was finally forced to watch. Derek took a step back, his once practiced confidence unraveling. He looked at Bianca, his fiancé, with eyes wide as though seeing her cruelty for the first time. "You said she wasn't capable. You said—" His voice faltered. Reporters leaned in, eager for the downfall. Bianca hissed, "Shut up!" But Derek shook his head, shame dripping from every syllable. "I built my career on lies you fed me, and now everyone knows." Natalie watched, heart racing, but calm. The man who had betrayed her stood unraveling at the altar, his pride disintegrating. Derek's hands shook as he pulled off the wedding band he had been given, tossing it onto the floor. Gasps echoed like thunder. Bianca lunged toward him, but he stepped away. "I won't marry a thief," he whispered. The crowd erupted, voices shouting, cameras flashing. Bianca's crown had begun to crack, and she couldn't stop it. Bianca's face burned crimson, her eyes wild with jealousy and humiliation. "You think you've won?" she spat at Natalie. "You'll never have what I have. This spotlight, this city, this power." Her voice cracked as the bouquet slipped from her grasp, petals scattering across the carpet. Natalie's posture stayed steady, her black gown swaying lightly as she spoke. "Power isn't taking, it's standing without fear." The words sliced through the noise. Reporters scribbled, cameras snapped, and the guests leaned forward, captivated by the contrast between two sisters, one unraveling in rage, the other composed in truth. Bianca's chest heaved, tears mixing with fury. She raised her hand as if to strike, but Daniel caught her wrist midair, his voice quiet but unyielding. "Not here, not again." Bianca ripped free, stumbling back. The chandeliers above reflected her downfall in 1,000 broken fragments. The hanger fell silent, a hush heavier than stone. Natalie turned slowly, her eyes locking on her sister.
You said I'd never be enough, but today you stand alone, and I stand beside the man you mocked. The difference is clear." Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight sharper than Bianca's rage. Gasps whispered through the crowd. Bianca staggered, her shoulders sagging under the humiliation pressing down from every angle. Derek had walked away, her lies exposed, her plan undone. For the first time, she looked small. Natalie stepped forward, close enough to see the cracks in her sister's mascara, the flicker of despair beneath the fury. "You invited me to be broken," she whispered. "Instead, I became unbreakable." Bianca's lips trembled. Cameras snapped the final shot, a queen dethroned by her own cruelty. The wedding had turned into her ruin.
Natalie turned from her sister, her gown sweeping across the carpet like a declaration. Daniel walked at her side, silent, steady, their hands locked together. The crowd parted instinctively, reporters shouting questions, flashes exploding. Natalie didn't flinch, didn't falter. Each step toward the doors was a victory written in silence. Behind her, Bianca collapsed into a chair, bouquet crushed, eyes glazed with rage and tears. Derek disappeared into the shadows, his name already tarnished. Outside, the sunlight poured over Natalie, warm and blinding. For years she had lived in shadows, defined by comparison, drowned by betrayal. Today she walked into light, her dignity intact, her name stronger than Bianca had ever imagined. The red carpet ended at the hangar's doors, but Natalie didn't stop. She walked past it, her head lifted, leaving behind the ruins of someone else's stage. Later that evening, the city buzzed with headlines. Natalie Brooks reclaims her story. Daniel Hale and his wife stun at Bianca Lawson's wedding. Gossip became gospel. Natalie sat quietly in Daniel's villa, her black gown folded across a chair, her hair loosened from its pins. She traced the ring on her finger, her heart calmer than it had been in years. Daniel entered, placing a simple mug of coffee beside her. No photographers, no audience, just silence. "You stood taller than I ever could have planned," he said softly. Natalie smiled faintly. "For the first time, I didn't stand for them. I stood for me." Outside, the gardens glowed with lanterns. Inside, for the first time, Natalie felt peace. She had walked through humiliation, betrayal, jealousy, and rage. And she hadn't just survived, she had conquered. Tomorrow, her story would spread. But tonight, it belonged to her.